Hello everyone, my name is Malcolm Carlisle. I'm a student at Arizona State University, and I've been working on a comprehensive plan for veterans to reduce suicide. By going under the underlying causes, instead of just focusing on gatekeeper training, I hope to reduce the incidence and prevalence of suicide for veterans. Today's topic is going to be brain healthy diet. There are links to diet and suicide prevention. We'll talk a little bit about some of the reasoning behind it and how you can eat better. All right, so what's a brain healthy diet? First, I do want to say that this is not, when I say diet here, this is not the diet people typically associate with weight loss. A diet is what you consume and how you consume it. So it's basically everything you take into your body. And everything you take into your body affects your well-being. Now, the links to diet and suicide, there have been quite a few studies showing some of these things. On this one from this gentleman Lewis in 2011, among men, risk of suicide death was 62% greater with low serum DHA, and that's the omega-3 fatty acid. Higher depressive symptoms are associated with poor diet quality among veterans, and there are a lot of links to depression, helplessness, hopelessness, and suicide. And then this one, at higher levels of alcohol use, the association between depressive systems and suicide proneness was more robust, while at lower levels of alcohol use, this association was attenuated or basically reduced. So there are links, again, to things that you take into your body, and how you feel and the impact they can have on you is great. All right, so what are some consequences of poor nutrition? And I do want to focus not just on suicide prevention, but on general health here as well. So poor nutrition can lead to reduced immunity, increased susceptibility to disease, impaired physical and mental development, and reduced productivity. Examples of some of these consequences, being obese or overweight, having diabetes, cardiovascular disease. There are certain cancers linked with unhealthy eating, osteoporosis and bone fractures, and dental disease. So there are a lot of things, unfortunately, that can happen from a poor diet. All right, now this is important too because there are foods that directly affect your mood. All right, so alcohol is a depressant, and it can definitely impact that. Trans fats, or anything with partially hydrogenated oil, foods with high levels of chemical preservatives or hormones, sugary snacks, refined carbs. So anything you see at the bakery that uses white rice or white flour specifically, a lot of your pastas that you'll see in restaurants and types of things have those refined carbs, and white rice is definitely not as good a choice as eating brown rice. Fried food, and that's a combination of the oils, and typically it's been floured with that white flour, and even caffeine can negatively affect your mood. Now here's some foods that positively affect mood. Fatty fish rich in omega-3s like salmon, herring, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and tuna. And now some of you might be thinking like, oh, that's the fish oil supplements, right? There have been a lot of studies showing that just taking supplements as opposed to ingesting them in the food is not effective in many cases or unnecessary. So you're definitely better off focusing on what you're eating as opposed to trying to take a multivitamin or a supplement. And I'll hit that later in this class too. Nuts such as walnuts, almonds, cashews, peanuts. Now, nuts are very good. They have a lot of healthy components in them, but they are very calorie dense as well, so you need to be mindful about how many you do eat. Avocados, again, have a lot of healthy oils in them, but you want to be mindful about the amount you consume. Beans are very good for you. Leafy greens like spinach, kale, Brussels sprouts, these have a lot of vitamins in them. And when you start looking at things called superfoods, if you look at the colors, they typically have very rich colors, the oranges, the greens, even purples. So, and usually when you see the reds, when you see those colors, that's usually a good indicator that it's got a high calorie count, but it's got a high nutrient count, high vitamin count. And then fresh fruit, such as blueberries, and there's a color I missed, right? Those deep blues. All right, so what's in your diet? All right, I'd like you to think about the things that you've eaten in the last 2 days or 48 hours and really think about if you're eating any foods that could have any mood effect on your mood. Right? You may notice I got a picture of some Rip Its here. I went through a few deployments, and that was a kind of a staple of the diet when I was downrange. And if you look at the other picture here, this is not uncommon to see in some of the dining facilities. And so, I understand it can be difficult to make good, healthy choices in some of the dining facilities. And there are options there in many cases. Sometimes it's a matter of making conscious choices to do that. So, how has being a veteran, or being in the military affected your day-to-day diet, right? Do you feel like you can make changes? Do you feel like it's something within your control? And do you even want to make changes? And it's something for you to think about for yourself. All right, so we're going to start talking about some of the big three, and this is your macronutrients. These are things that kind of make up the core of your diet. This is different than food groups that you'll see later, but you definitely want to know some of this information so you can make better informed choices. So we're going to be talking about carbohydrates, protein, and fats. These are the three core components of your foods. And carbohydrates first. All right, so when you start looking at, if you decide to do calorie counting or using the apps and stuff, which is great to help you kind of monitor what you're putting into your body, carbohydrates have about, for each gram, they have about 4 kilocalories. Now, you're an average, 20-year-old male in the military is going to need between 2,600 calories a day to 3,200 calories a day in some cases, and for females it's much lower. It could be anywhere from 1,800 to 2,400 depending on level of activity. And so all these things add up to kind of eat into your calorie count. All right, the recommended allowance. If you are sedentary or don't do anything, then about 40 to 50% of your total daily calories should be carbohydrates. And you'll see some variance in this. We've taken from multiple sources, but I have a slide later on that kind of breaks it down to make so it's a little easier for you to track. If you exercise regularly, you can maybe take, about 2/3 or 60% of your total daily calories could be coming from carbohydrates. But carbohydrates really should be making up the bulk of your diet. And some food sources, right? Grains, right? Dairy. Yeah, now fruit will have some carbohydrates in it, and dairy too. But grains you'll typically see have in your fruits and your vegetables have a lot of your carbohydrates in it. Protein. So this is the other leg of the big three. And protein has, for every gram, 4 kilograms. Protein in and of itself is very good for you, has a lot of purposes in the body. Things you want to be careful for when you're looking at protein sources are red meat, because they have a lot of saturated fat, and there have been a lot of studies linking saturated fat to a lot of health issues. So just be mindful that you want to kind of mix up your protein sources. Now, the recommended daily allowance you're going to see, depending on where you look, varies a lot, okay? If you're in the military and you're very active, you're probably going to need more than an average person, but it can be between 0.8 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, and we'll get into that later so you can see how that shakes out. There are a lot of different sources of protein, though. You've got your legumes, which can be your beans, lentils, soy products like tofu or even soybeans, right? Peanuts and nuts, whole grains like quinoa, oats, brown rice, seeds. A lot of vegetables have proteins in them, and there are plenty of animal sources as well. And there are a lot of meat alternative products, even though you're usually made from vegetables. They have come a long way in recent years. So your fats, as you can see, fat, if you look at it, 1 gram equals 0.9 kilocalories. So it's twice as calorie dense as your proteins and your carbohydrates. So you definitely want to be careful about how much you're consuming. The recommended daily analysis is about 20 to 35% of your total calorie intake for the day. Again, there's that warning there. Watch out for your saturated fats. And typically saturated fats are going to be solids at room temperature. So if you see that steak and the fat in it is solid at room temperature, that's a saturated fat. Some of them, like your coconut oils, your palm kernel oils, shortenings, butter, cream cheese, your full fat dairy products like some yogurts, those all have saturated fat. And this is a fairly recent change, reducing the saturated fats. They've just found a lot of links to cardiovascular disease and other problems because of it. Some other food sources for your fats though, your oils, nuts, seeds, a lot of meat, fish, and dairy all have these fats in them. All right, so next we have alcohol. Now, alcohol is not a macronutrient or an essential part of the diet. I am including it though because it does have calories in it and does have an impact when you include it in your diet. And alcohol, for every gram, has 7 kilocalories. So depending on whether it's wine, liquor, or beer, and that's not even accounting for the other ingredients in it, can have quite a few calories. Now, older studies had shown there might be, some minor benefits from low levels of alcohol, usually centered around like the Mediterranean diet and red wine. Newer studies say this: the risk of all-cause mortality, that's death by essentially anything, and of cancer specifically rises with increasing levels of consumption. The level of consumption that minimizes health loss is 0. So, unfortunately, studies are saying now that all alcohol, if you do any amount of drinking, can have negative impacts on your health. And then there's the extra calories as well that can lead to obesity and being overweight, which have a lot of unfortunate side effects on your health. All right, so to kind of sum up what I was talking about earlier, so when you look at the breakdown per day for your fats, your protein, and your carbs, your fats should comprise between 20 to 35% of your daily diet. And just remember, you want to keep your saturated fats less than 10% of that. Protein can be anywhere from 10 to 35% to be healthy levels. And then carbohydrates, again, should be a significant portion of your diet at 45 to 65%. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about each of them again. So carbohydrates, that's your dietary fibers. So fiber is not digestible, but it does prevent a lot of health conditions like hemorrhoids, constipation, cancer. It really helps ease the digestive system. Fiber can lower cholesterol, and then your grains, your vegetables, your fruits are great sources of carbohydrates. Just keep in mind when you're talking about grains, if you're going to eat bread, you want to watch out for the highly processed white flours. And then, recommended is about 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories of intake. So if you're, 20-year-old active person and you're taking up to 3,000 calories a day, then you want to make sure you're getting those grains of fiber in there. And now you can track this yourself if you want to, but there are a lot of apps out there like MyFitnessPal that can really help track some of these things for you so you don't have to stress about it. So fat as well, it is essential to the diet. You don't want to cut, like carbohydrates, you don't want to cut out of your diet. Fat, you don't want to cut out of your diet. Proteins, you don't want to cut out of your diet. And so when you're seeing some of these fad diets where they're cutting these essential parts out, you want to avoid that. You want to avoid extremes in anything because you need these things for a healthy body. So fat is essential to health and vital body functions. It helps with temperature regulation, vital organ protection, distribution of some vitamins, hormone regulation, energy production, and a a lot of your cell membranes are formed from broken down fat. So you need this in your diet. Please don't try and cut it all out. Animal sources of fat typically have saturated fat. Again, those are the ones we're talking about, solid at room temperature. And as you can see the coconut oil here. Just keep in mind, just because your house is 100 degrees and the coconut oil is melted does not mean it is not a saturated fat still, okay? And some of your plant sources, you've got your palm oil, your coconut oils, and your cocoa butters, so just watch your intake of those. So watch your red meat, watch your saturated fats. Next up is protein. An important point to consider too is that protein does not have to come from meat. However, meat is a complete protein, meaning it has all the essential amino acids that your body needs. If you are planning on going to more of a vegan lifestyle or cutting all meat out of your diet, you really want to look at changing up where you get your plant protein sources from, so you are getting those essential vitamins and minerals. And unfortunately, if you go full vegan, you'll probably have to take a supplement like B12 to make sure you're getting what your body needs to be healthy. All right, so proteins are a combination of amino acids, and there are thousands of different types of protein in the body, but there are some common ones like carrying oxygen and hemoglobin, fighting diseases with your antibodies. They help with chemical reactions, that's enzyme reactions, muscle contractions, blood clotting, messengers, right? All these different things. And we've identified 20 ones that are needed for basic sources of life. The body can basically take these 20 and restructure them to anything else in the body. 12 of them your body can produce. The other 8, those are what are they called, the essential amino acids, must be consumed in the diet. Now this next point is something I was hitting on earlier. This is some general recommendations for protein consumption. So 0.8 and upwards of 1.5 grams per kilogram. Just to make it a little bit simpler, if a person weighs 220 pounds, that equals 100 kilograms, and that would mean you would need between 80 to 150 grams of protein a day. Now, on the low end of 0.8 grams, that's 13 eggs in a day. So that should tell you it's quite a bit of protein for someone who weighs 220 pounds. But if you weigh less, if you have less body mass, you'll need significantly less as well. All right, some other things, right, besides the macronutrients of fat, of protein, of carbohydrates, you've also got vitamins, minerals, and water to consider. Now, vitamins are organic substances essential to human function, and there are 14 essential vitamins that have been identified. Thiamine, B2, niacin, B6, pantothenic acid, folic acid, B12, biotin, choline, C, A, D, E, and K are all your essential vitamins. And you should, if you eat a healthy diet, if you eat a robust from a lot of different sources, you really shouldn't have to worry about it, but it is something you want to be mindful of. Just because you are eating carbohydrates does not mean you're getting all the essential vitamins and minerals that you need. There are quite like things like scurvy, for example, and there are other diseases based on some of these deficiencies. So you want to look at what you're eating and make sure you're getting from robust amounts of different sources. So minerals then are inorganic elements that allow the body to function properly. And you've got major minerals that come in large quantities, or relatively large quantities anyway: calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chloride, magnesium. And then you have trace elements, and really the only distinction is the amount, when they look at this, is the amount the body needs. So chromium, copper, iodine, iron, manganese, molybdenum, yeah, sorry if my pronunciation is a little off on that, selenium and zinc are all trace elements. And then finally is water, and water is vital to normal function. And it's really hard to kind of peg how much water someone really needs a day. There are nutrition books that recommend 3.7 liters a day for men and 2.7 liters per day for women, but they, even in those professional literature, will tell you this is really going to depend on the environment, whether it's hot or cold, the activity level, the fitness level of the person, any drugs they've been taking. And by drugs, it can mean caffeine, which is a diuretic and causes you to urinate more, sodium levels, all these different things. There are other different medications too that can cause you to urinate more. So it's really going to have to be something that you do on a personal level. Typically speaking, if your urine is a light yellow or clear, you're usually hydrated, but don't overhydrate as well. That can cause you some issues too. All right, so multivitamins, this is a question a lot of people often wonder about. If you eat a healthy diet, you will get most, if not all, the minerals you need. And there are some exceptions. And here's another thing to consider too. That studies shown that have actually studied multivitamin consumption, that there are little or no health benefits, and in some cases can increase the health risk from multivitamins or supplements. There was a study done quite some time ago looking at fish oils, and they actually found higher levels of cancer in people that were taking some of these supplements, the high levels of supplements. So you really want to be mindful about it's probably better to eat healthier than it is to try and take a multivitamin. Now there are people who might potentially need multivitamins, and some of that is really based around the diet that they currently have. So infants and children that are not consuming fortified milk, they might need vitamin D. Women that may become pregnant might need folic acid. Vegans might need B12. Anyone not consuming dairy products might need vitamin D, and you're going to notice a lot of vitamin D here potentially needed because most milk products in the U.S. are fortified with vitamin D. Adults over age 50 might need B12 and vitamin D. If you have darker skin, if you have a lot of melanin, it can actually block the rays of the sun and stop you from synthesizing vitamin D. And those on restrictive diets. Now, there are going to be some extreme cases for bariatric patients who need to lose a certain amount of weight, and they might be putting them on shakes or they're doing surgeries, and it really impact how much food they can consume, and so they might end up taking a multivitamin. Smokers might end up needing a multivitamin because smoking can really mess with your absorption of minerals and vitamins. Alcohol-dependent individuals, pregnant women might need iron, women with heavy menstrual periods might need iron, and if you tend to donate blood a lot or have an intestinal disease that messes with your body's absorption of food, you might also need an iron supplement. I would recommend you check with a provider before you just put yourself on supplements. You may find that you can make dietary choices, and that can really help you. All right, so now we're moving on from the macronutrients and some of this other information and looking at what is considered the 5 food groups. And sometimes these foods will have all 3. They might have fat, they might have protein, and they might have carbohydrates in them. So this is a little bit of a different split here, and we're going to be talking about fruits, vegetables, proteins, grains, and dairy products. Okay, so first off is fruit, and this is any fruit or 100% fruit juice counts as part of the fruit group. Could be fresh, canned, frozen, or dried, and maybe whole, cut up, or pureed. I would be careful about fruits that come in the sugar-based juices. Just be mindful of that if you're trying to get fruit. Vegetables, any vegetable or 100% vegetable juice counts as a member of this vegetable group. I would definitely recommend you look at some of the ingredients in some of these though. Especially some of your vegetable juices might have a really high sodium count, and you want to watch that as well. They can be raw, they can be cooked. There's a big push for raw vegetables now. Just keep in mind that sometimes not cooking a vegetable can actually mess up the way your body absorbs the vitamins and minerals within it. So you definitely want to make sure you prep your food properly. Fresh frozen fruit, canned, dry, dehydrated, could be whole, cut up. And just like with fruit, there have been studies done on frozen fruits and vegetables, and they've shown for the most part frozen is good. There's no real health concerns with it. And then we have protein. And these are all the foods made from meat, poultry, seafood, beans and peas, eggs, processed soy products, nuts, and seeds. They can all be considered part of the protein food group. But you, like mentioned earlier, right? Some of your beans and peas may also be part of your vegetable group. In dairy, there are proteins. All right, next up is grains. This is any food made from wheat, rice, oats, cornmeal, barley, or another cereal grain. Breads, pastas, oatmeals, breakfast cereals, tortillas, grits. These are all examples of grain products. And then finally, we have dairy. So these are all your fluid milk products. Many foods made from milk are considered part of this food group. Most dairy group choices should be fat-free or low fat. So your whole fat, for example, yogurt has a lot of saturated fat in it, and that's what you want to be mindful of. Foods made from milk that retain their calcium content are part of this group. Okay, so just a quick summary here. You've got vegetables, fruits, proteins, dairy, and grains. And this is how a lot of systems base their diet. So we're going to be talking about MyPlate, and this is a simple way to plan your diet. So MyPlate, easy way to use or make a diet. You can just go to myplate.gov. You can select on Find Resources MyPlate, and you've got it right there. You can click on the MyPlate plan. So you need to know how many calories you're supposed to be taking in a day. And you can go do some very complex formulas based on body mass and all these other things, but there are plenty of websites now that show you what you need. So we're going to focus on some of the easier ones right here, and I want you to keep in mind what I'm talking about here today is not about losing weight. This is not a diet for that. I really want you to focus on eating quality foods that improve physical and mental health. Okay, so if you look at this chart here, right, it makes it pretty simple. If you're a male, it gives age range based on your activity level, tells roughly how many calories you should be consuming a day. And you can see there's a lot of variance depending on your activity level. If you don't do much, it can be as low as 24 to 2,200 calories a day to maintain your weight. But if you're active, you can be consuming many more calories. So if you like to eat more, it's probably a good idea to be more active. And just as an example here, I'm in my mid-40s. So if you look at if I'm moderately active, I would need about 2,600 calories a day to maintain my current weight, and I would have to go down lower than that if I planned on losing weight. For females, as you can see, it is unfortunate. A lot of it's based on body mass and how much muscle mass that you carry. The amount of calories you have to consume to maintain your current weight is much lower than for males. If you look at the 46 to 50 range for females, it is 1,800 calories a day or less if you were sedentary to maintain your weight, and that's not a lot of food. Okay, so if you're not sure, you don't want to do it that way, you can go on the MyPlate plan, right? And you can click on Start, and you can see from the website here is a little snippet of it. And what you do then is you click on the Start button from the Choose MyPlate plan, and there's the link right there. Just input your data, and you can see when you first start, there's some of the blocks are going to be missing, like sex is there, age is there, physical activity is there. But as you start entering data, it'll start giving you a few more blocks to go on. So this is my data. I'm 45, I'm male, I weigh about 185 pounds, 5'8". I'm physically active. I do 30 to 60 minutes a day on average. If you put a rest day in there, don't put that you're sedentary. It's typically on an average. So if you're taking 2 rest days a week, that's okay. You can put that you're active, and then you just click on the calculate food plan. And you can see here the results it gave me: 2,400 calories to achieve a healthy weight, 2,800 to maintain my current weight. There's going to be a lot of variance here. This is an estimation, so you want to think about maybe you're 185 pounds and carrying a lot of fat mass. Maybe you're 185 pounds and carrying a lot of muscle mass. So there is going to be some variance in here. Just keep that in mind. The best thing to do if you really are concerned about losing weight, which again is not the point of this course here, is to track your calories and weigh yourself frequently. Okay, moving along. So based on my findings here, either 24 or 2,800 calories, you can scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can just click on the appropriate measure. So if you're looking at, it should be all of you being over the age of 14, it'll give you the range there. So if you're female, sedentary, for the most part, you'll be at 1,800 calories. If you were a 20-year-old male that is very active, you'll probably be up in the 3,200 range. For me, I'm in the 24, 26 to 2,800 range, depending on what I want to do for my category. And so if you click on each one, it'll give you a basic plan for your day. So to keep it simple, right? And if you look at my 2,400 calorie plan versus my 26 versus my 28, there are a little bit of a difference here in the amount of grains, the amount of protein, but you can see it's not a massive difference. So you can adjust up or down depending on what you need for yourself. So if I were to look at my 2,400 calorie plan, I would need 2 cups of fruit, 3 cups of vegetables, 8 ounces of grains, 6.5 ounces of protein, or 3 cups of dairy. And each of these blue links here is, you can click on it and it'll give you more information if you're not sure about your sources. So it makes it very easy to help plan your daily diet. Now, there are other ways you can apply this. There are sample menus listed on the myplate.gov site. And so you can simply, I've got the link here. You can go to it. It gives you some great examples of food selections you can do for yourself. Most of these are based off the 2,000 calorie per day diet. So you can make subtle adjustments to this to get the calories that you need to be healthy. All right, here's another one for a food planner as well, also from ChooseMyPlate.gov. These are free resources, and there are plenty of other websites out there that offer meal plans, so don't make it more complicated than it has to be. There's some where you can just input how many calories per day, and they will give you all these different options for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or how many meals you want to do during the day. Very helpful. Okay, if you still have any questions, you can go to nutrition.va.gov. That's the veteran website. Most medical facilities have dietitians and nutritionists. If you're not sure, they can help you with meal plans, and there are plenty of calorie tracking apps. They do way more than that. They can help track your water intake, your exercise, the foods that you eat, your macronutrient levels, and most of them are free. Now there's a paid version of MyFitnessPal, but you can do the free version and get everything you really need out of it to see how you're doing, even if you just want to start tracking how you're eating. Okay, so keep in mind, healthy food options can improve your physical and mental well-being. Food choices don't have to be complicated, so don't think it has to be. And there are plenty of tools out there to help make good choices. I really appreciate your time. I hope this has been useful for you, and good luck out there. And please watch the rest of the courses if you're concerned about veteran suicide.